All right, folks, let me tell you something very special today. It's going to be huge. We're talking about a deck, not just any deck, but the best deck. A deck that's all about power, strength, and most importantly, walls. I know, some people are going to say, Trump, why walls? Let me tell you, walls are incredible. Everyone's talking about them. The best people are talking about them. And this deck, it's all walls. Nothing but walls. Now, when you think about walls, you think about security, protection, and defense. And guess what? This deck's going to block everything. Your opponents, they won't even know what hit them. It's unbeatable. You're going to be so protected, so strong, that no one's going to get through. Believe me. These walls, folks, they're not just any walls. These are the best walls. They're strong, they're tall, they'll stop anything. And when you have a great wall, you control the game. Simple as that. Now I know a lot of people, they're talking about all these fancy creatures, dragons, elves, angels. Well, guess what? We don't need those. We've got walls. And when you've got walls, you don't need anything else. Believe me, it's going to be great. No one's ever seen anything like it. But hey, I'm not going to keep talking about walls forever. You're going to hear all about this incredible deck from someone who knows how to break it down. He's going to tell you how these walls work, why they work. It's going to be fantastic. So here he is, folks, the guy who knows all about these walls.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is an honor to present your deck to the YouTube world. So let me get into it and we can go over the creatures and the strategy. First up at 0 mana, we have the Shield Sphere. This is a 0/6 wall. It says counts as a wall. It's an artifact creature. And if it is assigned as a blocker, you put a -0/-1 counter on it. So you block with it once, it goes down to a 0/5. You block with it twice, it goes down to a 0/4, etc., until it dies. So this is a 0 mana wall that will consistently just be able to block over and over and over and over again. And I just thought it was a great ad by the president to throw this in with such great value. You know how good he gets deals done. So this is going to be a good deal for this deck. We then have the Perimeter Captain. This is a 0/4 for 1. It is whenever a creature blocks that has Defender, you gain 2 life. So 90% of this, 99% of the creatures in this deck are Defenders. So you're going to be gaining tons of life all the time. Most people, the first time you have this out and they attack, they think they're just attacking and see if you'll block. Maybe they think that you think that they have some kind of trick or buff spell or something like that. But you can just keep blocking with your big walls and gaining life, and it just adds some more survivability to this deck. And it's such a great card, especially with 4 toughness and with that ability, and you can stack it with multiple of these on the battlefield at 1 mana. It's a great way to just get that early advantage on turn 1. We have some removal. We have 3 copies of Swords to Plowshares. You're going to be able to exile creatures. This is great for anything that has indestructible or anything like that. It's a 1 mana removal spell. It's definitely one of the best removal spells in white for sure for 1 mana. They gain life equal to its power, but you'll also be gaining life, and you'll also be having gigantic walls that'll be blocking anything that tries to attack you. So the game will get a little grindy and go a little longer, but that's in your benefit because this deck will outpace other decks. We have 1 copy of the Resolute Watchdog. This doggo right here is a 1 mana 1/3 with Defender, and it has the ability that if you pay 1 and sacrifice it, then target creature you control gains indestructible until end of turn. So if you have a key piece of this deck that I will show later, there are key creatures in this deck that you want to keep alive. So just having one of these in the deck, just in case, that you can have that out there. Also, it's a 1/3 Defender, which is nice. That just gives you that ability to protect the main pieces of your deck. You could make an argument for adding more of these with the amount of removal that's in Magic, but I think 1 was just fine. Next up, we have the Stalwart Shield Bearers. This is a 0/3 for 2 Defender. And these are your lords. And it's not just like any other lord where it adds +1/+1. This adds +0/+2. So other defender creatures, which is almost your entire deck, are going to get +0/+2 just with one of these on the battlefield. So if you played that perimeter captain on turn 1 and then you played this is going to be a 0/6 that gets 2 life, gains you 2 life every time it blocks. So this is a great lord for a deck like this. It wouldn't be in any other deck. I think this might be the only deck that this kind of card fits into, but it's a great card. We got Wall of Omens up next. This is a 0/4 for 2, and it draws you a card when it enters the battlefield. I think that's pretty good value to me. 2 mana, 0/4 defender, and then it gets you a card. Having card advantage is very, very important in this deck. All right, next up is probably one of the key pieces of this deck. I think it's a great card. Brave the Sands. It gives all of your creatures vigilance. So when all these big walls can attack, and we'll show you how that happens later because you're probably thinking, how do we win? They all will be these gigantic walls that defend as well. So you're going to be going in with tons of power, and then you're not going to have to worry about a crackback because all of your creatures are just going to be making, as walls do, making a gigantic impenetrable defense against your opponent. And it gives you even better, each creature you control can block an additional creature. So if they're going really wide, you can take that 0/6 and you can block multiple of their creatures with it and be able to take out some of their stuff. We have Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive. This is one of those cards that you're going to want to protect with the Watchdog. It says creatures you control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. So all of your walls, once they're able to attack, which I'll show you how to do that in a second, none of them are going to be able to be blocked. So with the amount of power we have on the battlefield, you might be able to hold this card in your hand, build up your big wall army, and then give them the ability to attack, and then just drop one of these, and then all of your creatures that don't have summoning sickness because they're already on the battlefield will just be able to swing in and win the game for you. So this is a very important card for this deck. We have the Suspicious Bookcase up next. This is a 0/4 for 2 artifact wall. And if you don't have your Tetsuko, you can always just pay 3 and tap this and give one of your creatures the ability to not be blocked. So you just take your biggest creature and pay 3, and then you can get in with that, and that might be able to win you a game. All right, now, how are we going to make these guys attack? Here is one of the ways. We have 4 of these in the deck. This is an enchantment called High Alert. It says each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power, and creatures you control that can attack as though they didn't have defender. So this enchantment makes your, let's just talk about this card here. This 0/4 for 2 into a 4/4 for 2. So the value is unmatched. You cannot find value like this in any other deck. President Trump gets deals done and gets deals that are beneficial to you. So this deck is just like those. All these creatures, 4/4 for 1, 3/3 for 2, 3/3 for 1. This is probably the best one of all. A 6/6 for 0. Like this is unbelievable that you're going to be able to have these kind of powerful creatures out in the battlefield that are able to attack for so cheap. And your opponent, when you start casting all of these walls and all these defenders, they're going to be very confused as to what you're doing, because you're going to be putting out all these walls. The first time I own this deck in paper, and the first time that I did this deck, I played against somebody. They were very confused as to what my win con was, because I wasn't attacking for about 4 turns, just building up. And then I dropped my Tetsuko and swung in and won. And now, let's just finish talking about High Alert. One of the good things about this is if you don't have Brave the Sands out and you have enough mana left over, then you can untap a target creature. So you can attack with whatever your biggest creature is, and then pay 4 and untap it. It's just a nice little added bonus. It's an extra tool in your tool belt for matches that are maybe going a little longer, or you need to have that strategy. You don't use it that often, but it's there at your disposal if you do need it. Now, this is going to be the big boy. A 3-mana, 0/8 defender, flying, and shroud. This is the best card in the whole deck when you talk about value. Once you are able to attack, it's an 8/8 with flying and shroud for 3 mana. Now, I don't know where you can get that kind of value anywhere else, but this Wall of Denial, this is incredible for what we're trying to do in this deck. Looks like President Trump wants to put some walls of denial on the southern border, and if he did, we wouldn't have anybody coming through. Up next is Slaughter the Strong. Now, this is definitely another card that is going to tip the scales in your favor and is very, very powerful for your deck and your deck only. This card wouldn't really be in many other decks, but when you have a deck where every single one of your creatures has 0 power, and this card says each player chooses any number of creatures they control with total power 4 or less, and then sacrifices all other creatures they control. So you could have your Tetsuko out, which is 1 power, and you could have your Arcades out, which is 3 power. That's 4 power right there. So you could select both of them and literally all of the other walls in this deck. And then you would get to keep everything. And then your opponent would have to pick and choose what they got with 4 power 4 or less, and then sacrifice everything else. So it's basically a 3-mana, one-sided board wipe where you don't have to sacrifice anything ever, and they have to make very, very tough decisions. And then we got Arcades the Strategist. This is a 4-mana in Bant. As you can tell, most of the rest of the deck is in Azorius. This is in Bant, but this card is so powerful and so important to the deck because you can't just have the 4 high alerts that allow your creatures to attack. You need another way to get this done. This card, Flying Vigilance, 4-mana Elder Dragon, and it says whenever a creature with Defender enters the battlefield under control, draw a card, which is huge because every single one of our creatures, other than Tetsuko and Arcades, have Defender. So you're going to be drawing tons and tons of cards every time you cast a spell. And then it says the same thing as High Alert on the bottom. Each creature you control Defender assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power and can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So let's take a look at the mana base. We got a lot of basic white, blue, green. We got a couple dual lands for white and blue because there's a lot of white and blue in here. We have a Seaside Citadel, 2 of them, so we can do the Bant colors, just splashing the green in. I got a couple forests in here just in case, and then some Canopy Vistas. And then I have 2 Tranquil Landscapes, which are able to be cycled, able to tap for colorless if you get one of these late game. And then you can also use this as a fetch and fetch any one of the 3 colors that we have in this deck. So this is an all-in-one, probably best fetch land for a deck like this because there's so many spells in here that have 1 colorless in it. So you can always make that work. And then if you can't, then you just sack it. And you could also put this out on turn 1 and sack it and get a color that you need. And then late game, you can cycle it and draw a card. But at late game, you're going to be drawing so many cards, it won't matter. Average converted mana cost is 2.14, nice and cheap. You can look at the color breakdown, mainly white with splashes of blue and green, which is why we have so many planes in this deck. And so many dual lands that tap for white. And then we have the splashes of the color in multiple places. So you're never going to be mana screwed with this deck. You can take a look at the rarities. Mostly uncommon and common. Just a splash of the key cards over here in the rare and mythic rares. Arcades is a mythic rare. But yeah, again, awesome deck. President Trump knocked it out of the park with this deck. Only $70 on TCG Player. I'm sure you could build it for way cheaper on other sites just because most of these cards are literally pennies to purchase. So if you like that deck, If you think this is a good idea, good strategy, let me know in the comments. Tell me what your favorite wall is down in the comments. Do all the algorithm things. And until next time, we'll catch you with another Deck Tech.
All right, folks, this deck is amazing. We're making magic great again, one wall at a time. No one builds walls like this, nobody. So if you want to dominate, you know what to do. Believe me, you'll win big. Make magic great again.